Hi, everybody, and welcome to video series. We're going to do the Kimberbell Welcome Spring Bench Pillow. I've been wanting to make this for a while. I've had some kits. I'm trying to get through some of my kits, and this is one of the ones that I've been wanting to make. This is one of the older bench pillows, so they are kind of done differently, and I'm going to kind of do them kind of backwards from the way the instructions say, because I need to get this quilted before I do the embroidery. So what we're going to do today, the first video will be basically I'm going to go through the fabric with you. I'm going to tell you how I'm going to do this, and then we're going to mark our main piece of fabric that's where we're going to do the embroidery. And then we're going to sew the top together. We're going to have to trim this down a little bit. And then we're going to sew the top together, piece it together into one piece before we sandwich it to do the quilting. Okay, so let's just talk first about the fabrics. So I've got my little book here ready to go. And I'm going to do the version done with the 9x14 hoop. There's two versions on the CD. There's one done with the 6x10 and one done with a 9x14. And they're going to be done the same way. You would just have to do more hoopings for the 6x10. So it's not a big deal. It's going to be done the same way. So if you have a smaller machine, just pick the 6x10 hoop. And then you'll do the same procedure, but you may have more hoopings when you go to do the embroidery. Okay, so it's not hard, and your marks will be different, so you'll need to look at your instructions for the marking that we're going to do here in a little bit. Okay, so let's talk about the fabric first. You will need a background fabric. So let's see here. Main background is white. There's 5/8 of a yard of that. The vertical outer borders are the ones on the ends here, and I chose to do my vertical outer borders in this blue with the flowers, but then I also made my backing fabric, and I'm going to do the 3-piece back, so I'll explain that in a minute because I cut mine differently. So I'm going to do my, this is the 2 end pieces, and then this is the center piece. So I like to do those 3-piece backs. It's much easier to get the pillows into the covers. So we're going to do that. So that I chose to do my backs and my my edge borders the same color. So those are all cut there. And then we need some fabric for the lettering. So this is going to be for the lettering, and I have green for the lettering for the welcome and spring. But the other thing I have added to these, I'm going to cut these out with my scan and cut. I'm not going to cut everything with the scan and cut. You can certainly trim these in the hoop, but when I go to and do the embroidery, I'm actually going to cut the letters in the scan and cut because the letters are always kind of intricate and this take a long time to trim. So I thought, well, I'll just do those in my scan and cut so that I can just lay them down. Okay, so what I've done with my green fabric then for my letters is I cut them to approximately the size I needed for my letters. And you can just leave it all in one piece too, because I think my kit just came with one big piece of fabric. But what I did then is I put some heat and bond light and I adhered it to the back of my fabric. So here's my pieces of fabric cut to about the size of my welcome and my spring. And then I just brought them up in the machine to see how big they were, so that could tell you how big to cut them. They don't really tell you in the instructions, so I just brought them up in the machine and just added an inch or so that I have enough to cut it out. So I put heat and bond light, and that's this product here, and it is the light, and you mustn't use light because that's what you can sew through. If you don't use ultra, because that is not meant to be sewn through. So heat and bond light. Okay, so I got that ironed on the back of my fabric, and I left the paper on. So I'm going to cut those out with my scan and cut. Okay, and then we need the rain boots. Now the rain boots were a yellow piece, and you notice that mine's kind of shiny. So I thought, well, they'd be really cute just yellow, but then I have this stuff called Vinyl Fuse, and if you've never used this, it's really super easy. All you do is just like lay it on your fabric, iron it down, and peel the paper away. I mean, it's like really easy to use. So it's called Vinyl Fuse. It's a Pellon product. And I just took the design for the rain boots. You know, I opened it up on my machine, saw about how big it was, cut my fabric, and then I cut my vinyl fuse and adhered my vinyl fuse. So I'm going to have little little vinyl rain boots on mine. So that's the yellow. And then I think the next piece says, oh, the ruched flowers. So I'm still up in the air about the ruched flowers. They did some ruching with this orange fabric for the flowers. And then there's a flower done as a yo-yo. So I'm still not sure about how I'm going to do the flowers. I might actually do some pull flowers. But anyway, my kit had this ruching cut in a strip. And I just have this here. It's like a 4-inch, let's see, what did they say? The ruching 4x21-inch strip. I just have a piece here that they cut for me. So I'm not sure yet about that. We'll see when I get to the end of the video if I'm going to do that or if we're going to use some pull flowers, might even do some felt flowers. So I'm just kind of deciding how I'm going to do the flowers yet. Okay. And then felt flowers, there's red felt. You know, you can use red felt for your flowers, and that's what they did with this. Let me pull this up a little bit right here. So here's the ruched flower here. Then there's a yo-yo flower and a felt flower. So we may actually use some pull flowers. We might do some felt flowers. I'm not sure yet. So we'll play with that in a little bit. And then you need about, the way I do my back, you're going to need a yard backing because I like to do the 3-piece back. So we talked about that a minute ago, and they say a half yard, but I like to use a yard for my backing. And then you're going to need, if you want to make your pillow form, you need about, I'm trying to remember, it's about 2/3 of a yard because you cut it like 16 by 38. So you need about 2/3 of a yard for your pillow form, which I will be making my own. Okay. And then you're going to need a little bit of maybe just a muslin or something simple to put on the backing. We're not going to see the back of this unless you're going to make it into a table topper. And we could make it into a table topper too, instead of a pillow. But for the backing, when we go to do the quilting. So you can just use, you can use muslin if you're just going to make it into a pillow. That's what I'm going to do. Or you could make it a nice piece of fabric that matched the back. Like if you wanted to make it in the blue, you could just use that for your backing and then make it into a table topper. So that would work also. Okay. So I have all of these cut, and the cutting instructions are kind of all over the book because this is an old style instruction booklet. So the first thing that we're going to be working with is so let's just talk about how big these need to be, I guess. The first thing that we're going to be working with is this main white piece of fabric, and it says to cut it 19 by 33. Okay. So when I go to piece it together at the end of this video, it's actually going to end up being 17 by, it's in the back of the book. So we'll go back towards the back of the book here. You cut it 17 by 31. So we're basically going to be cutting an inch off of each side. I cut it 19 by 33 because when they did these markings for my embroidery, I need to do those before I do the quilting, because otherwise I figured I'd mess up the measurements because it's going to be 2 inches shorter and 2 inches narrower. So I figured we better mark. So what I'm going to do is we'll mark these next. And I'm going to mark my quilting in one color of a heat erasable marker, and I'm going to use make my marks for my embroidery in another color. So I'm just going to make them 2 colors. Just don't hit it with an iron in between, and you'll have all your marks. Okay. So that's kind of how I thought I'd see if I could figure that out. I also cut for this one. This is 19 by 33 then. This is the main body. So this one I also cut. I don't know if you can see it very well on the camera, but I do have a piece of shape flex on the back of this as well. So I put shape flex on the back of this because this is going to have quite a lot of embroidery on it, and it will work much better with the shape flex. And we're not going to have any stabilizer in here other than the batting. So I did put shape flex on my background piece. Okay. And then you need to cut, like I said, with these pieces, and then you know what? I forgot the umbrella. The umbrella's pink. So I decided my umbrella needed to have the vinyl fuse on there too. So I have that cut about the size of the umbrella. So what I did is I just opened up, for these 3 to kind of get an idea of how big they needed to be. I just opened up the designs on the machine, saw how big they were, and added about an inch. Okay. So I did put the vinyl fuse also on my pink for my umbrella. So those are my applique pieces. I just got those kind of over here. All right, so the other thing then that we need to know how big to cut is the, so this was 19 by 33. This is the main body part. And then let's go back and talk so that the rest of the, like the cutting instructions are back here. So let's get back to the back here. Okay, so the borders are on page 9 of my instructions. And you cut the borders 4.5 by 17. And we'll probably have to trim those down a little bit, but that's what they had you do. It was 4.5 by 17. So there's the 2 pieces in the blue. And then instead of the way they did their back, the 2-piece back, I did the 3-piece back. So my pieces are, these are the 2 end pieces. These are 10 by 17. So there's 2 pieces here that are 10 by 17. And then the middle piece is 28 by 17. So that's this middle piece here. Okay, so that way it's so much easier to get the pillow into the pillow cover, because then you can reach through and pull the pillow in. It's otherwise you're trying to stuff it into that little hole, and it's very hard. So anyway, that is my back. Okay, so I had those written here, and this is on page 9. When we get done marking this piece, we're going to trim this piece then down to 17 by 31, which is going to be about an inch off of each end. Okay, off each end and each side, because they made it 2 inches bigger for the quilt, for the embroidery, because they did the embroidery first. But see, I can't free motion well enough to free motion around my embroidery. So we're going to mark everything, piece the top together, and then we're going to do the quilting, and then we're going to do the embroidering through everything. So we're kind of doing this backwards. Okay. So these are a little harder to follow. That's why I thought I'd just make a video of me doing this, because I've been wanting to make this one. And then you can tell, this is a good way to do it, because you can quilt it in advance and it works just fine. And we'll use the clear blue tiles to do the quilting. Okay, so as you can see, they have all the embroidery instructions like at the beginning. But what we're going to do is we're going to do the marking here on page 3. And if you're doing the 6 by 10, you may have more marks to make. So make sure you're reading your directions. They're going to be done the same way, but you may have a couple more marks to make because of the size of your hoop. But you can certainly do it. And they have separate instructions. So what we're going to do is we're going to mark this first. Then we're going to trim it down to the appropriate size. And then we're going to piece the ends together. And then I'm going to sandwich it for quilting. So the first video will be up to, we'll piece it and we'll have it trimmed and pieced, and we'll do all the marking, and then I will do, the second video will be the quilting. Okay. All right. So let's see here. So I'm going to pick a color. I'm not sure what color I want to do my embroidery in. So maybe I usually do my blue for my quilting. So we'll use that for the quilting. So how about we do the red? Hopefully my red pen works okay. I haven't tried it yet. So I guess you'll know here in a few minutes. So it tells me, so I've got my shape flex on here, and I've got to cut to 19 by 33. Because when I was looking at this, the other pillow tops that I've done, like this, we did gather together this way. Also, they measured the marks for those from the center. But see, this one, they measured everything from the left. So I thought, well, how am I going to do that? Because I know if I take an inch off of everything, I'm going to mess everything up. So I just cut it the size they said. I'm going to mark it all, and then I'll trim it down to the right size, because otherwise I'll have it all messed up. Okay, so let's see. First, mark the top of your fabric by writing the word top. So we will probably, I am going to put a little mark up here just to know which way's up. So I know. And actually I might cut that off, so I may have to move it down a little bit when we go to trim, but that way we know for now. Okay. And I just put I don't know if you can see it. Can you see? I just have an arrow pointing up. I didn't write the word top. I just made an arrow. Then it says for mark number 1 is made by drawing a line 12 3/4 inches over from the left and 13 1/4 inches up from the bottom. All right. So I've got my ruler here. And it says 12 3/4 inches over from the left. So let's do that one first. So I'm going to get my ruler here, my red pen, my ruler, and I'm going to go 12 3/4 inches, and it's going to be about 13 inches up. So let's go up this way, because we're making, I don't know if you can see it too well on here. We're making this mark right here. So it's fairly close to the top. It's right here. And I'll mark it 1, so I know that's 1. All right, so it said from the left, 12 3/4 inches. So here's my 12 3/4 inches here. About right here. Okay, and I'm just going to make a little mark there. And then it says 13 1/4 inches up. I think I might need to make that longer. So let's see here. I'm going to go this way so I can pull it over this way a little bit. And we're going to do this so I have something longer so I can measure better. So I'm going to put my 2 at 12 3/4 on the edge here. That way I have a longer, so I can make a longer mark over here. So we'll do a longer mark. Maybe my pen will work, I don't know. I haven't tried this one yet, so sometimes I have trouble with pens getting dry on me. Okay, so there's my marks over here, okay? Then it says to do 13 1/4 inches up from the bottom. So we're going to go over here, and I'm going to go 13 1/4. So I'm going to lay, let me see if you can see this. I'm just going to lay the 13 1/4 line right here. So I have the end here to work with. So 13 1/4 up from the bottom. So I got 13 1/4 right here on the bottom, and now I got this nice mark. So now I can make a nice mark up here. I don't know if my pen's going to work. I may have to go grab my other one. Just a second here. I got another one. All right, we'll use this one. So I got another red pen. So we'll do this mark here. 13 1/4. Did it work? Yep. So there's this one right here. So that is the first mark. So we went over 12 3/4. We'll just remeasure to make sure. Measure twice, they say. Sometimes I measure 3 or 4 times. So there's my 12 3/4 over from the left. And then my 13 1/4 inches up from the bottom. So 13 1/4 inches up from the bottom. That looks pretty good. So there's my first mark, and I'm just going to mark this number 1. Okay, so I got that mark number 1. Okay, so let's see what it says for mark number 2. Mark number 2 is made by drawing a line 5 3/4 inches over from the left. So we're working on this one right here, this blue, this kind of green one right here. So 5 1/2 inches up, 5 3/4 inches over from the left. So 5 3/4 inches over from the left. So I'm going to do the same thing. Pull this over. I'm going to put the 5 3/4 inches on the edge of my fabric here. Okay, so here's my 5 3/4 inches. And try to make sure your fabric's good and straight, because that'll help you get your lines straight here. So 5 3/4, yeah, 5 3/4 inches over from the left. Okay, and then 5 1/2 inches up from the right. So it's going to be from the bottom. So it's going to be, roughly up in here somewhere. So we'll just make a mark there. And then 5 1/2 from the bottom. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to mark 5 1/2 inches up from the bottom. So I'm going to line it up, my ruler up on the 5 1/2 inch mark, and then I'm going to go like this. Okay, so there's our line. And this is going to be number 2. So this is my mark right here for number 2. It's a little off kilter, but that's okay. All right, so I've got 1 up here. I got 2 down here. Now 3 says, so that's going to be right over here. It's kind of over to the right a little bit further. So this one's going to be made by drawing a line 14 1/4 inches over from the left. So let me pull it back this way. So 14 1/4, and then it's only up 7 3/4. So it's going to be up about in here somewhere. Okay, so 14, to look at the instructions again, 14 1/4. So we're going to do 14 1/4 on the edge here. So on my ruler. And then it's going to be up, so this was 5 1/2, so it's going to be up, around in here somewhere. So we'll just make the mark about in here somewhere. Okay, 14 1/4. And then the other measurement is 7 3/4 up from the bottom. 7 3/4 inches up from the bottom. Okay, so we'll do that. So do 7 3/4. So 7 3/4 inches up from the bottom. So I made my mark a little high, so I'll have to bring it down a little bit. I might bring this down just a little bit first. Got a little over exuberant to the top. We'll go down this way a little bit. There we go. All right, and then 7 and, whoops, better check my measurement again. 7 3/4 from the bottom. 7 3/4. Right there. Okay, whoops. I scooted it. There we go. So we're going to go 7 3/4 inches from the bottom. Make a line there. Okay. So we got 1, 2, and then this is going to be 3. Okay, so we got first 3. So that looks pretty good. So we got 1, 2, and 3. Now let's see what it says. Mark number 4. I think there's 5 marks on this one. Yeah. So mark number 4 says it's made by drawing a line 23 3/4 inches over from the left. So, and then it's up 12 1/4. So it's going to be up along this way, up here. So you can see it's right here. Okay, so right here. So 23 3/4 inches. So I've got, this is only a 24-inch ruler. So we'll have to get, I think the next measurement, I'm going to have to get another ruler. I've got a bigger ruler here. So, all right. So this one's 23 3/4. So 23, see if I can find my marks on that end of the ruler are very, very light. This is a very old ruler. I've had it for a long time. So I can see the 1/2 inch mark, but I'm not, oh, maybe I can see them. Okay, here we go. I found it. I can see them in the center. I just can't see them on the outside anymore. And then it said 12 inches or so up. So we're talking up in here. So I'm going to move up a little bit. All right. So it said 12 1/4. So let me see if I'm up in that area. I think I am. Okay, so 23 3/4 over from the left. Mark this, okay? And then we have to come up 12 1/4 inches from the bottom. So just be careful when you're doing this. Read your measurements carefully. Just do one at a time. So see, I got a little over exuberant to the top. So let's make this come down a little bit more. I need to come down this way just a little bit because I got a little excited. Okay. And then it's 12 1/4. So 12 1/4 inches up from the bottom. Okay, so there's 12 1/4 inches up from the bottom. I may have to start all over again. Oh, there it goes. Okay. All right, so I think everybody's okay. I'm sorry about the focusing. So this is number 4. So this was 23 3/4 inches from the left and 12 1/4 inches up. And this is number 4. So we'll mark this number 4. Okay, so does this all make sense? And then it's pretty easy. It looks really scary on this piece of paper, but once you kind of get the hang of it, it's pretty easy. Okay, now the next one says, mark 5, is made by drawing a line 24 1/4 inches over from the left. So that's when I need to get a different ruler because I don't have a long enough ruler. So I got my big longie here. Okay, so this one is like a 36-inch ruler. So this is I keep this one around just because of these kind of problems. So we're going to do 24 1/4 inches. Make sure I read it carefully. 24, and then it's only going to be up 7. So it's going to be down this way. So let me pull this over. Okay, so 24 1/4. So I have to find, this ruler is a little different. I have to look very carefully at the marks on it. So that's 1/4. 24 1/4. I'm not used to using this one. I don't use it very often. I just use it when I need a really big ruler. Works good for like batting and stuff. Okay, so 24 1/4 inches over from the left. So we're going to mark this down here, and it's going to be about 7 inches up. So it says 7 inches up from the bottom. Okay, so I'll go back to my other ruler. That one's easier. Okay. 7 inches. Oh, I didn't go up high enough, so we're going to have to go up a little higher with this one. Just a second. Just going to go straight up here. I didn't get quite the right ones, marks, but that's okay. So 7 inches up from the bottom. Make sure it's just 7. Yep, 7 inches from the bottom. So we're going to bring it over here so we can put that on the bottom of the fabric and then go this way. Okay, like that. And then this is going to be number 5. So the marks that we're going to be using, you know, are these center marks right here. Okay. Now I'll probably use my snowman camera, but if you are using a, you know, have to use just a grid, make sure you make these lines long enough so that you have something to give you, you know, you can work with when it comes to hooping. So like this one's a little bit small up here. So if I was hooping with my grid, I'd probably extend these longer and right there just to, but for my snowman, that's going to be fine. Okay. In fact, the one size could go a little bit longer. So I might just make this one longer right now. This one's just a little bit short. Okay. Like that. Even just for my snowman, I think it gives me a little bit more to see. Okay. So there are our marks. So what it is going to be, let me show you the picture of it again on the front. First mark down here on the bottom, down here on the side. Actually, no, I'm sorry. Mark number 1 up here is for welcome. This is the word welcome. Mark number 2, you can see it down here at this corner down here. Pull this over. Okay. That is for the little umbrella. Okay. And then mark number 3 is going to be for the word spring. And mark number 4 is going to be for the flower stems and the leaves. And then mark number 5 will be for the rain boots down here. Okay. So that's how it's marked. And if we look at our picture here, this looks pretty good. You can kind of see the picture. Let me see if you can kind of see the picture without getting out of focus here. So here's, you know, 2 is down over on the left. And we got 1 and 3 kind of basically right in here. Okay. And then 4 and 5 are very close to each other over here. So the 5 is just a little bit to the right of 4. All right, so that looks pretty good. So I've got those all marked. So the reason I did this way is because I was concerned that I would not be able to get the marks done correctly. To do this all over again, there might be something in the settings that makes it be slow. I'll check before once I pause it. All right, so now we need to trim this off. So remember when we said in the back of the book here, we're not gonna do the embroidery yet. So we're gonna quilt it and put it together and quilt it first. So back towards the back, and I think it's on it's past. Okay, here we go, page 9. It says that trim the pillow front fabric to 17 by 31, approximately 1 inch from each side. So in other words, we're going to take an inch off of each side, and then we're going to piece it together. The reason I did it this way is that I didn't have to try to remove an inch from everything. I was afraid that I'd never get it right. So we're going to take 1 inch off. So right now this is, if I measure it, this is 33 inches long, and it is 17 inches or 19 inches long. Yeah, so 33 by 19. So we're going to take 1 inch off of each side. So let's do the top and the bottom first. So I'm just going to take my long ruler here. So hopefully this will work for you. I'm going to take the long ruler and I'm going to lay it along the edge here. So I was a little off in the center. I noticed that the center of mine was just got a little curvy here. So we'll lay it on a grid line here to help me out. Notice I got a little, must have got a little carried away in the middle here. So we'll get it squared up a little bit better. Yeah, it's okay though. All right. So we're going to take 1 inch off the bottom, and then we're going to turn it over and do 1 inch off the top. So here's 1 inch. Can find my rotary cutter. I'm going to start over here on the right because I have to get around this camera. So 1 inch. I've just got it around the 1 inch line, and then I'm going to kind of come around the camera here. So see if I can get this cut without getting the camera all whacked out again. How did I do? Did I get it? It's a little hard to cut with a camera in front of you. Sorry, guys. Okay. Oops. Got a couple of spots over here. Can't press down very well with the, I've got a big arm, camera arm in front of me. So let me see if I can get these little spots over here cut out. Okay. There we go. Okay. So we got the top, the 1 inch off the bottom. Now I'm going to flip it over and we're going to take 1 inch off the top. So I may have to take my pen again and just come down this way so I know this is the top, because we're going to cut that first arrow off. Okay, so there's my second arrow. So we know where the top is. We'll just flip this over and we'll take 1 inch off the bottom, or off the top. Line it up on a line so it'll help me here. Keep it straight. Okay, so I'm going to take 1 inch off here. Okay, so hopefully this is making sense. I'm just doing this backwards from the instructions. So that's why I'm kind of bouncing around a lot. I apologize that I'm kind of bouncing around a lot for you. Okay, there's my 1 inch. Let's see if I got it cut through. It does make it hard when you have a camera there. There we go. So 1 inch. Got 1 inch off the top. So I'm almost cut off my arrow again. So we can see it though. It's right here. Okay. Now we're going to do the sides. So I'm going to bring it this way. Put it on a line for me. And then we'll do 1 inch off the first side. This will be a little easier. I think I can get around the camera easier with this one. It's narrow. Okay. Like that. And I'm going to flip it over and do the other side. Get it on a line. But just be careful when you cut your, when you get your fabric cut, cut it as straight as you can. And then everything will be, all your measurements will be okay. And if you're a little short, it's still going to be just fine. All right. And there's our inch off of there. So there is our top trimmed down with our marks on it, ready for the embroidery. We're going to have to put some marks on here when we go to do the quilting in the second video, but then I'm going to make those in a different color. So looks like I'm 31 by 17. Woohoo, we did it. So there, I think we're all straight and everything. And then now I need to move the camera and the computer over to my sewing machine. We're going to go ahead and piece this together now. So basically the piecing on this pillow, all we have to do to piece it is to put those two pieces that were on page 9. The two pieces of the end strips are 4.5 by 17. And we're just going to piece those on the end, and then we're going to get ready to quilt. So if you give me a couple minutes, I need to move some things over so that I can use the sewing machine, and then we will piece this together. I will put there is some, I forgot to tell you, there's some really cute rickrack. So they had kind of wide rickrack that you put on trim on the end. So I have some red rickrack here, and that we'll put on before we put it together at the end. So this will be one of the embellishments we'll do. So that we won't put that on yet. All right, so we're just going to put the ends on. So it says right sides together in 1/4 inch seam. So the 4.5 by 17 strips to each vertical border. Okay, and then after we put it together, we'll put the rickrack on. So that's all we have to do to get ready to do the quilting. So, all right, so if you give me just a moment, I will move the camera and then I'll be over at the sewing machine. Okay, so I'm over here at the machine and we're just going to do, just piece these two little end pieces on is all we have to do. And then the next video will be on the quilting. So hopefully this video turned out okay with a couple of problems with the focus. I don't know what's going on. I'll have to look at it and see if it's real bad, then we'll just do it over again. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I've got my two, what are they, 4.5 by 17. So we're going to put these on the ends. Get my two blue pieces. I'm going to put some pins in here and get them pinned on. And then we're going to be using a 1/4 inch seam, and I'll show you how to get that on the, I usually use the piecing stitch on the machine. It's funny how the camera focuses though. I've noticed that sometimes when I'm standing at the camera instead of at the machine, I suppose it's because there's such a bigger depth there that maybe that does it. I don't know. So anyway, let's get these on here. So I got my right sides together. I've got, remember, there's shape flex on the back of my white piece. Oops, here, I'm having trouble getting things lined up today. I don't know what's going on. Might even get the quilting done today. That'd be really cool. Yeah, I've been anxious to do this one. I've been trying to get it worked out, get it done, and I've had so many things to do for Dad's house and stuff. So I've been signing papers, and the house sold on Friday. And this is Sunday. And I'm making this video. So the house sold a couple of days ago. I got a couple more calls to make, and then I'm kind of done with the house. So that was a big thing to do, get my dad's house sold. So, okay. So I got my pins in. I am going to use the stitch. I like to use the piecing stitch on the machine. So I'm going to use on my Q tab, okay, Q02. It's right here. All right, so we're going to use Q02. And that gives me my 1/4 inch seam, and what it does is it moves the needle over to the right, and then I can run the fabric right along the edge of my J foot, which is the standard zigzag foot. So give me a second here. I got to find my foot controller. It's down here somewhere. I had my machine service, so I had to move everything. And so now everything's kind of a jumble under my table. All right. So I'm going to do my 1/4 inch seam. Get this centered. Okay, I'm going to drop my needle. I'm going to take a stitch and just tie off in the ends because these are kind of like borders. So I'm going to tie them off just so they won't come off. And I'm going to do my 1/4 inch seam. So a second here. Ron had my speed turned all the way down as far as it would go. Let's take the pins out as we go here. Or machine stopped quieter. I hadn't sewn on it yet. Just brought it back home Thursday, I guess. Maybe it was Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday, I guess. All right, so we're doing our 1/4 inch seam. Not sure if I'm straight or not here. I try to be as straight as I can. Sometimes I get a little wonky when I'm trying to work with the camera here. I notice that I'm a little bit cockeyed here on the side. All right. And I'm going to go to the end, and I'm going to tie off, and then I'm going to cut. So we'll do one side, and then we'll do the other side. Get rid of these pins. Probably have them on the floor. Okay, so let's see here. This one. Get it tied off. Our technician always teases me because the buttons are wearing off on my machine because I do use the buttons a lot. All of my buttons are almost worn off. They can put little buttons on though. I could just order some new buttons next time he services it and have him put them on. I must have something in my skin. People say they say that that some people's skin are just more, you know, apt to have that happen. Okay, second here. I'm going to tie up at the end. All right, so we're done with that. I'm just piecing with just Pima cotton thread, the just white Pima cotton thread in the needle and the bobbin, and I think I have a number 11 needle in. That's usually what I piece with. Okay, so then I'm going to take this and I'm going to press these open like this, okay? And then we're going to be ready to sandwich this for the quilting. So we're going to quilt it before we do the embroidery. So the embroidery is all marked, but we're going to quilt it first because we want it to be quilted first, okay? So what I'm going to do next, and I probably will do this off camera. You don't need to watch me do this. I think most of you kind of know how to do this, but I'm going to take my piece of muslin, and I have just a piece of, well, this is just kind of cotton, plain cotton fabric. I'm going to make this into a pillow, so I'm just going to use a plain kind of cream colored cotton fabric. I think I got this at Walmart. This is some of the Waverly cotton fabric. And I'm just going to put this on the back, and I'm going to make it maybe about, about 6 inches longer and about 6 inches wider, so that it'll be about 3 inches all the way around. Just give me a little bit to hoop into. So that means if it was 31, it'll be, you know, so well, actually now we're going to be about, we added all this extra, so I'll have to measure it. But 17 plus 6 is going to be what? 20, 24, 23. So I'm going to make it, you know, pretty long. And then I'm going to add 6 inches. I'll just measure it when I get it over to the table. Add about 6 inches, so I have about 3 inches all the way around. And then I'm going to have a piece of batting the same size as my backing. Okay, and then I'm going to pin baste, and I like to pin baste. And if you like to spray, that's fine. I just don't care for the spray. But I'm going to pin baste it fairly close together so that I can pick it up and move it around, and then we'll be ready for quilting in the next video. So anyway, so this is going to be, this is all ready for the quilting now. So I'm just going to go press it. Just when you're pressing, stay away from your marks. If you used a heat away marking pen, if you used a regular one, it's fine. Mine's heat away, so I don't want to touch any of my marks. And then I'm just going to press this, and then I'm going to get my fabric ready for the backing and for the batting. And I'll make a note of what size I used so I can tell you in the next video. And the next video is going to be quilting. I'll be back in a little bit, and we'll do part number 2 of Welcome Spring Bench Pillow, and it'll be quilting. Thanks, everybody.